All right, the fantasy footballers are excited once again to bring in a friend of the show and one of the top minds in fantasy football, Christopher Harris. Welcome back, my friend.
Hey, guys, thanks. It's always fun. I love having you on our show, and it's super excellent to be on yours. Thank you.
Absolutely, and you can check him out on Twitter at Harris Football, and you definitely want to check out his podcast, the Harris Football Podcast, one of our favorites. We have a lot of listeners of our show that say, you know, they either heard about us on his show or vice versa, and they listen to both of them a lot. So we also recommend his show very highly. And so today we're going to have Chris on, and we're going to go through some mailbag questions from the Foot Clan. We're going to bring Chris in and get his opinion on some of these. So let's go ahead and kick it off. You guys ready?
Yes.
Do it.
All right. This is a good one. Zach from Minnesota wants to know, he said he picked up Big Ben off the waiver wire. Well, that's nice. And someone dropped him during a bye week. Now, if he's ready to go in Week 8, now we know he's ready to go in Week 8, do you start him against Cincinnati or do you start Tannehill against New England?
This is for me?
Sure, we'll kick it to you first, and then we'll jump in. So
you're lobbing me a softball.
There you go. I know. We'll start that way.
That is not a problem. Big Ben should be back on the field. I don't care if he's got one knee. As long as he's active, he's your guy. You're not going to know perfect information before Tannehill on Thursday. I have enough faith that Big Ben will play. Was close enough to playing this past week. And even if he can't go, I have a suspicion that you'll be able to get the Tannehill versus the Patriots equivalent off the waiver wire.
Fair enough. Do you guys agree?
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, we've been dying for Big Ben to get back out there. What was nice to see was we actually got some sweet Antonio fantasy action this weekend from Landry Jones. So that the excitement for me is building for Big Ben, and that coming off of just seeing how the team is playing, getting Big Ben in there, that the Steelers are going to be just back to nastiness.
Yeah, and they are at home against Cincinnati. Now, a follow-up, Ryan wanted to know, Drew Brees or Big Ben? We're sticking Big Ben, right?
I think personally, I think this question is easier.
Yeah.
So really, Chris, what do you think if you had to play Drew Brees or Ryan Tannehill this week? I think that's a better question to me.
Yeah, it is a good question, and I haven't fully formulated my ranks. They're still percolating in my lower intestine, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still going to say Breeze, but I also acknowledge that I might change my mind. I'm not trying to say that I think the Patriots defense is all that good. In fact, we saw Jet receivers really running free in that game, but there's a little Belichick trust there.
Yeah.
That Belichick against a West Coast offense, I know exactly what he's going to do. It's play everybody tight, make Tannehill beat you down the field, make sure Lamar Miller doesn't get off, make sure Jarvis Landry can't make his bones with the 2-yard passes. And, Tannehill really hasn't proven that he's ready to beat a good defense down the field consistently.
Yeah, I definitely think that New England is going to be able to tackle better than Houston last week.
Oh, my God.
So.
Was that not the worst thing you've ever seen in your life?
It's just, you never want to say that pro athletes quit, because I think that's perilously close to narrative and getting inside guys' heads. And it's not like some guys don't quit. I just don't think we know it. We're never really going to know for sure. But boy, if you ever wanted to show film of somebody who looked like they were quitting, wow.
Yeah, it was atrocious, just absolutely atrocious. So let me follow that one up with a question for you, Chris. What is your kind of philosophy on the transformation in Miami? Is this something, what is your take on the new coach and what's going on there?
I think you look real good when your first two opponents are Tennessee and Houston. So there's a little, a little skepticism there. But listen, you can only play the opponents they put on the schedule. And, I don't think any of the four of us could look at this team and say that before, when they had the old coach there, old Chipotle manager himself, that they would have rolled over those two teams. I don't think they would have. So it's an improvement. For me, the big story is Cameron Wake, and Sue waking up a little bit in this most recent one. But Cameron Wake has given the Patriots a big problem for years, and New England's offensive line is a big old mess. And the Jets did a nice job taking advantage of it, and I think Cameron Wake will too. I'm a little less sold on the offensive transformation, but I think the defense might be for real.
I completely agree with the defense. I love them coming into this season. We gushed several times, and I still have nightmares of being at an Arizona Cardinal game, watching Cameron Wake, I think, roll off at least 4 sacks in a game. he was a nightmare, and like he really jumped on my radar at that point, and I've been following his career. So the beginning of this season was just like what was going on. Nobody on that line was doing anything, and like you said, Cameron Wake is revitalized, and I'm buying more into the offense of just of a coach saying, "Hey, Lamar Miller is pretty decent. Maybe we should try and get him the ball more than once every 10 snaps." So, which I think will really help a guy like Tannehill. So I'm let's say 1 foot in the water.
What if this will be a test for them this week? Obviously,
yes,
on Thursday night. So. Let's go ahead. I still have some sadness. Did you guys ever hear Cameron Wake could have been an Arizona Cardinal?
Yeah, I've heard the stories.
Yeah, before the Super Bowl. All right, Pedro in San Paulo, Brazil.
Bonjour.
There it is. All right, let me ask you this, Chris. Tony Romo is on waivers for Pedro here, and is he somebody that you would stash on your bench, therefore roster 2 quarterbacks? Because of what he'll be when he comes back.
So what, we're getting him week 12, we're assuming, and it's actually against Miami, is that right?
Is it 12? I thought it was 11.
Oh, maybe you might be right. Maybe it's 11. So, I don't.
It is
I don't
against
mind.
Miami in 11, though. Yeah.
Okay, it is Miami in week 11. Yeah. So, like, I would say, very much depends on the league format. I think in a 10-team league, it's awfully tough to justify carrying a second quarterback when you're having to fill in bye weeks, as these bye weeks are still going along. But then again, as the season gets later, more and more buys have passed. You don't need to be hanging on to the guy who might get 10 touches, and rescue you that week because he might. You don't have to roster Andre Ellington, to speak of the Cardinals right now, relative to Tony Romo, because just the workload isn't there. So I am all aboard as the season goes along. You want those potential league changers on your bench just in case they come through. It obviously comes down to what the opportunity cost is, though. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't roster Romo right now. I don't. I agree with it. Just the bye weeks. I mean, looking at some of my teams, because the system rolled over, so now I can see my matchups. I got some nasty looking buys, and you have in week 9. Week 9 is coming, people.
Yeah, Seattle and Arizona on by that week.
Beware! It's not just them. Basically, half the league is on bye.
6 teams. Yeah.
So that's coming up. And I can't hold on to Romo if that long. Maybe in 2 weeks if he's still there, I'll think about it. But just right now, I can't do it.
Okay, let me. I've got a couple of listener questions here. They are rest of season questions, and we're gonna put these in the 12-team standard league context here. But Ryan in Boston wants to know: Would you rather have LeGarrette Blount or Danny Woodhead rest of season in a standard league?
Okay.
What are your thoughts there, Chris? We'll start with you.
It's just like, don't. Anytime you can get rid of LeGarrette Blount, you do it.
I'm not far off on that.
It almost didn't matter what the second name was.
So, Chris, what were your thoughts going into the Colts game for LeGarrette Blount, where it was the history was there for the New England Patriots to run all over them with a guy like LeGarrette Blount, and then he did it. How did you feel about him during that game? Is that just that one particular defense, and we won't see that again? That's just that one matchup.
I'm guessing we'll see it again 2 weeks hence when they play Washington. That there are going to be games where LeGarrette Blount is useful, but I don't think he's worth rostering for those games. I think he's a trash bag. I think he's a really bad player. Honestly, if you lined up the worst players in the NFL, I think LeGarrette Blount is part of it. He's terrible at football.
Yeah, but he's getting into the passing game now, Chris.
Yeah, he caught his first
touchdown.
Yeah, that was real nice. While I would definitely roster Blount personally for those upcoming matchups that you could, have some good opportunity, I definitely would rather have Woodhead here. Just from a consistency standpoint, it's really tough to pull the trigger on putting Blount in your lineup, not knowing if maybe he'll only get 3 carries when the other running back is gone. So
and look, if the Chargers are going to continue in this consistency of being terrible first half. A terrible first half football team like they were against the Packers and last week against the Raiders, and there's all this makeup that they have to do. Danny Woodhead is going to feast. Even if it's standard, you don't get the point for the catch. you still get points for the yardage. And Danny Woodhead is going to see a lot of work if that continues.
Okay, so Sam in Germany, this is maybe a little bit better question because LeGarrette Blount's not in it, basically. Rest of season, Doug Martin or Latavius Murray?
Oh, that's great. That's a good question, and my guess is I'm still going to say Latavius Murray, even though Martin has been spectacular for a couple weeks in a row and has been my binky for like 3 years running. My fading years at ESPN were very much marked by my love of the muscle hamster. Doug Martin's injury problems are not directly related to my no longer being at ESPN, but they're really not. But my worry with Martin is just he'll get hurt. You can't really predict injury, but I've seen what it looks like the second this guy even has anything nagging with his legs. He just isn't the same player. The tape on him is wonderful right now, but it doesn't look wonderful as soon as he starts hobbling around or even, doesn't have that explosiveness. And so I'll probably continue to say Latavius Murray for the athletic potential. I felt like we lucked into a touchdown while the game was still at question against the Chargers last week. But you could sell me on Martin. I think Martin's probably playing a little better right now, but I'm just looking down the road worrying about health.
How did you feel about Jameis Winston this week, Chris? With that, the touchdown pass to Evans was spectacular. But overall for the whole game, how did you feel on him this week?
Just looked like a rookie. Looks like, that team makes so many mistakes. I think they had 16 accepted penalties in that game.
That's bad.
That sounds like a recipe for Kirk Cousins coming back from 24 down.
Back-to-back roughing the passer calls.
Back-to-back.
Wow.
I did not catch that.
Oh, yeah.
That takes skill.
It does. It really does. And, clearly it's not Jameis who's committing those. I think he's probably telling the defense, though. Kill that guy. I think Jameis has his moments, and I do think he knows where to go with the ball. It's not a Blake Bortles situation where Blake Bortles just doesn't know where to go with the ball. He really doesn't have a concept. He's a good athlete, Blake Bortles. He's got a terrific arm. There are throws where you see a lot of future in him, but in general, he just isn't making progressions. And, it's a lot of empty calories there. Whereas with Winston, I think you can see a future. You can see a future where the mistakes are fewer. His accuracy does need to get a little bit better, but he seems to be working within the context of an offense. I'd be interested. Do you guys feel the same way?
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment. I just really wanted to get your opinion after that. I have that the Evans touchdown just replaying in my head of how it dropped in perfectly for him. So for the question though, back to Doug Martin versus Latavius Murray, give me your thoughts, Jason.
I actually really am a big fan of both of these guys the rest of the season. A trade for either, but Doug Martin to me, he's looked great. He's done it before, and while he does have a little bit of an injury history, I'm not as worried about that going forward just because you don't have it right now, and we can't predict that. And his strength of schedule.
Tell Arian Foster that.
Well, if we're talking about Darren McFadden or someone like that, okay, well, there's a whole lot more data for the injuries. But with Doug Martin, his schedule coming up is just so incredibly beautiful. Pretty much from here until week 16, I believe he only has like one somewhat difficult matchup against the Rams. Everyone else is just pretty much the bottom half of the league. And so I expect Martin to keep up the numbers he's putting up. And right now, that's pretty much RB1.
All right. Let's answer a question from Drew in Wine Country, California. Now, he is talking about Detroit, and I'm going to make sure that we know Drew put this question in there. I'm not just forcing a Joique Bell question into the show because, for goodness sakes, I don't want to talk about him anymore. Goodness, not now. Coaching change, all right?
It's his best game of the year. How do you not want to talk about Joique Bell?
Yeah, 10 snaps. Coaching change in Detroit, is it worth – his question here, Drew's question is it worth looking at Abdullah again with the Joe Lombardi? He's out the door. The offensive line changes. He's in a PPR league himself. What are your thoughts on the coaching change and the running back situation in Detroit, Chris? I mean, if you're up against the wall and you got to start one of these guys or you got to invest in one of these guys moving forward, do you do it at all or who is it?
Oh, I mean, it's Riddick in a PPR. I don't think it's close, right? I mean,
Yep.
I think he still leads the NFL in running back receptions. He was the one who played the most snaps. He played something like 28 snaps or something relative to 10 for Bell and 11 for Abdullah. And clearly that is game flow dependent, but if there's a team I think, could the game flow would tend to benefit Riddick more weeks than not. He got a red zone carry. He's looked a little bit better as a running back. I think actually as a waiver ad in a 12-team league, and even if it's standard scoring, he's not a terrible option if you're in bye week hell. What will the philosophical change be with Lombardi gone? Anybody else's guess is as good as mine. We're really not going to know until we see it.
Probably going to be better.
Well, if it's a change, I wouldn't think that it would be a change in the direction of Joique Bell.
Right.
Right. It feels like it would be a change in the direction of, all right, we're going to clean house. Caldwell, you're probably on your way out too. Like, let's see if Ameer Abdullah can play. Let's see if Theoretic can play. Joique Bell, for as much as we all thought he had potential for this year, maybe not healthy, plus 30 years old. Like, the future of that backfield is not Joique Bell, but anybody who says they know what the actual, boots on the ground difference is going to look like is speculating.
I think Abdullah will be worth another look because, like Chris was saying, to me, if I'm running the Detroit Lions, I'm throwing Abdullah out there. I'm going to see, is this guy capable of doing what we drafted a guy in the second round? Let's see what he can do. While I agree that this moving forward right now with the information we have is still Theo Riddick, but Joe Lombardi's coming from that New Orleans Saints system of we like to throw the ball to the running back, and it's not really working for Detroit to win games. So will the new play callers still be very very happy to do that like Lombardi has in the past? So I have a little bit of concerns for Riddick, but Abdullah, if he's on your waiver wire, which there's I've seen a lot of wires where he's available, I would stash him. I'm not playing him this week, but I would stash him.
Did you have any conflicting thoughts, Jason?
No, Mike pretty much said what I think, which is I believe that they will have to, when you make this change and you look what they've been doing, they're going to have to run the ball more on the ground. Just because they need a change. You saw it in Miami. They weren't running the ball, and then they said, we're going to dedicate ourselves to being more balanced. And I expect just literally because it's a change, and you have to come in and you have to do something different. The only thing different, you can't come out and say, we're going to throw the ball more. You just can't do that if you're the Lions. So I expect them to give a little bit more ground usage.
Right. By the same token, though, I think they would have loved to have run the ball, and they tried to run the ball. There's no offensive line there. And if some offensive coordinator comes in and says, all right, that's it, we're calling 30 run plays a game, and we're getting 42 yards, that guy's not going to last either. So to some degree, it's a question of can they, they fired the offensive line coaches too, which might tell you a little something about what they think their line performance has been relative to what they think their line talent is.
Right.
I think they probably believe in the talent a little more than has been shown. Let's see. Maybe they're able to block them up a little bit better. We've certainly seen Miami turn it around. We've seen Seattle turn it around offensively with their line. We've seen the Eagles look a little bit better blocking. It's not impossible to make improvements, and that would be very welcome.
And just for our listeners, they have a matchup with the Chiefs this week in Arrowhead. So, not the most ideal situation for that transformation. Let's go ahead and move on here. This is a question from Jody. Thursday night football question, really. Who would you rather start on Thursday Night Football, Rashard Matthews or Brandon LaFell?
Ooh, the garbage can, Brandon LaFell.
Did you see that Vine by chance?
Oh, yeah. It was.
Okay.
I'm in Massachusetts. It was on TV. It wasn't just on the internet. It was on TV.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, you are a Pats fan, right? Is that your team? Am I correct?
It is. It's the team of my youth, indeed.
All right.
And believe me, they were bad in my youth. It was not a fun youth to be a football fan. I think the answer is LaFell. Rashard Matthews is a product of West Coastness, and that's good because West Coastness isn't going to go away. But he's too takeawayable, against a competent defensive game plan. That short stuff is just too easy to get rid of. Just you're going to see a lot of zone from the Pats. You're going to see a lot of press. And I just don't think those short throws are going to be there. And Rashard Matthews is really, that's what he is. What we're sort of the hue and cry that's being sounded in Patriots Nation is at least the workload was there for LaFell. And it's not like Aaron Dobson is any better. So, I think they're going to continue to throw it to him. when you get benched for Dobson, that is not a good sign. But I think all will be forgiven.
Now, Butler up in New England, your DB, is he shadowing people or is he just doing kind of a half of the field? What's his assignments been lately?
If they were using him as a shadow, that would be a bad strategy. He's not playing that well. He's okay. He's not as good as Patriots fans think he is. He is not by any stretch an elite corner. He's not a top 20 corner in the NFL right now. It's ironic for the guy who made the big ball hawking play in the Super Bowl, but his ball skills are terrible. I mean, he's been in position to make plays on the ball. His positioning's all right. He just lets people catch it. It's funny. I don't know if you guys saw that play as the Jets were driving, and it was a third down, and they wound up throwing it to Devin Smith down the sideline, which was not a good. He was covered.
I did see that play.
Malcolm Butler was on Eric Decker. Eric Decker was at the sticks, wide open, because he really ran Butler through the ringer most of the day, and Fitzpatrick for some reason took the long throw, which was a stupid mistake. They don't use him as a shadow, and it's good that they don't, because he's not as good as everybody, or at least Patriot fans seem to think.
Okay. Thanks for that perspective.
Yeah,
sure.
No, that's good stuff.
Let's go ahead and
We got one more?
yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this is one from Lucas in Green Bay, and it's a Barnidge question.
Yeah, Mac.
Because they don't get better than Barnidge questions.
Before we get into Barnidge, so Chris, we're having a heck of a time over here nicknaming Barnidge, and nicknaming is what we do. That's basically our show is just trying to find a funny.
That's really
name for
all
people.
yeah, that's it.
So Maximum Barnidge is what we've been going with. Is there anything better boiling over there at the Harris Football Show?
No, but I haven't put that much thought into it. I will say on Twitter and on today's show, I did refer to him as the Devontae Freeman of tight ends.
That's very fair.
I heard Barnyard Dog today too.
Barnidge, that's all right.
Not too bad.
Not too bad.
But this Lucas wants to know: can you start playing Barnidge over other tight ends such as Kelce or Olsen? I know my thoughts on the matter, but let's kick it to Chris on this final question here.
I think he probably belongs in the same tier, in the same conversation. And, when you're talking about tight ends, why not just ride the hot hand? And he can, speaking of hot hand, a one-handed catch that was just utterly brilliant in that game. He got over 100 yards, didn't score a touchdown, so obviously cuttable, slacker.
Yep.
Just like Devontae
Especially
Freeman.
tight ends, they don't score touchdowns. You cut them right away.
That's right. Devontae Freeman, same thing, gone off the roster. No, I think he belongs in the same tier, but I don't think he's, I don't have to say I don't think. He is not as talented as probably 15 of the tight ends in the NFL. He's just kind of another guy who's found himself in a wonderful situation, and I don't mind riding him for as long as he wants to continue to, go on this skein. It's not going to last all year because it never does. 30-year-old journeyman, I believe you have some familiarity with him. Like, he's okay, but he's I'm not using him over Olsen or Kelce.
Yeah, I'm not using him over those guys either because I'm waiting for the shoe to drop on him. I had to do a little confession segment this past week and admit the fact that like Rashard Matthews and Dante Moncrief were sustainable, usable players in fantasy football. I just kept waiting for that to stop, and so I don't know if it's going to be the same case with Barnidge or not.
And we always tell people, like, to quote Jason, you got to stay in the flames.
Stay in the
sometimes.
flames.
Stay in the flames. I like that. That's true. You really do. There's a lot of truth to that. As long as you don't stick with it after the flames have simmered, remembering the flames, right? You stay with them until they last, and then you jump.
Don't walk on the coals. You stay in the flames. You don't walk on the coals.
It's perfect. I love it.
And you have to wait for there to be flames too. Don't chase the points after a 1 week burst from somebody. Let them establish themselves for a couple weeks, and then hop in. And then you're set. So, hey, Chris, we really appreciate you coming on the show today and tackling some of these questions with us. You can find Chris at Harris Football on Twitter. Make sure you tune into the Harris Football Podcast. It is always a good listen. We love it, and we appreciate you being on, Chris.
Thanks for having me, guys. And, just continued success. It's so great. And I listen to your show. It's really, really fun and awesome that we're, both doing well and that it feels like we're really good companion pieces to one another. So anybody who listens to the football guys are going to think that that the podcast over here is a little less funny, but we have our moments, and I think you'll enjoy it.
I think I'm with you. We're a very complimentary podcast.
Yeah,
one in your left pocket, one in your right pocket. No big, because you got them both.
What kind of person are you talking about that has two cell phones?
They got two phones. It's Shefty.
Okay.
No, it's just two burners on the wire.
There you go.
Usually the people I know who have multiple phones are unscrupulous types.
There you go.
Okay. Well, those guys will like our show too.
But yes, go Team Independent Podcast.
There you go.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.